famously by ExxonMobil. There's a lot of articles out there talking about that in the last 6 months. And John, if you have those articles handy, can you put them in the chat room so people can see it? And that's one real possibility, because how convenient and let me just say, how coincidental is it that with an ocean so vast that we take those coordinates that the ROV has and it plops us dead smack in the center of another oil field across the world. So that's number one. Number two, if you use the Universal Transverse Mercator coordinate system, which is a grid-based method of specifying locations on the surface of the Earth in a two-dimensional application, what it does is it grids out the Earth. And what that coordinate that you're seeing on the RV screen is that coordinate within that particular piece of that grid. And when you do that, then it seems to make a little more sense. But when we dug a little bit further, and John and I were going and screenshotting different videos from different times and different live shots and all this, because we've been accumulating this data for quite some time, what we came to find out was the date stamps were inaccurate. They were wrong, because they were saying they capped the well earlier before they did the top kill procedure, or something along that line. And John can correct me if I'm wrong, because he did the majority of the research on this. But secondly, the coordinates were totally off kilter too. And if you use that UTM coordinate system, it actually put the rovers at one point in time 20 miles away from where we saw it the majority of the time. So there are certainly inconsistencies, and we know full well that they've been lying for quite some time. I mean, there's definitely precedent to be had here. But my question to our guest tonight would be, why do you think that is? Do you think, Henning, do you think it's a volcano that they tapped into?
I know it's a volcano.
Can you
into the mantle?
Can you give the audience, especially for people who weren't here on Thursday night, a little background about how you came to this conclusion and what you think they actually tapped into?
Well, to begin with, when I saw the first BT live feed, I just knew instantly that's not crude oil, that's a volcano. It acts like a volcano. It has the same tint to it as a volcano. And it actually looked like a mud volcano. But I learned later that there was tar balls washing up on the beaches. And that made me go do some more research. And I found out in the USGS 2005 Geological Survey of the Mexican Gulf that actually from the West Texas all the way over to the Mississippi River Delta, there is a giant asphalt volcano, one giant one, and it takes up almost 1/12 of the Mexican Gulf area in itself. So they tapped into something. And I also, to begin with, my numbers were they were drilling down to 18,000 feet. Well, that is in itself, it's quite deep. That's some 3.2 miles. But I later found out that they actually drilled 30,000 feet down. And then I began, that is very, very deep. So I went on and examined how thick is the crust in the Mexican Gulf. And I found out that the crust is between 4 to 7 miles thick. And taking account of 30,000 feet, which is over 6 miles, then I just knew they hit the mantle. That's what they did, and that's why it blew up in their faces. They couldn't control that. So that's why we have this calamity now.
Well, let me ask you this. What would be the purpose, Henning, of spraying dispersant into the stuff that's coming out of this riser pipe, vice, say, putting it into crude oil? What's the major differences between a crude oil leak and what we're seeing now?
Well, hello?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I thought someone wanted to say something. Was that AC that wanted to say something?
No, I didn't hear anything. By all means, go ahead.
Spray it into the oil. It will mix with the oil and dissolve the oil as much as possible. That's its intent to do so. That's what we know of, what we can read on the ingredients and its function. But it could contain much more other lethal stuff which we don't know about, and they don't want to talk about that either. But I don't see any purpose of spraying that into the actual volcano plume at all, other than it will mix with the water anyway, but in this case it will run freely. It will not attach itself to the oil, but it will attach itself to those hot gases coming up, and that will make it rise to the sea. But then I hear that people are saying that, well, they still see fish jump around and looking happy and nothing is wrong. Then I also see that fish are actually in lakes, inland, are going belly up and are died, all of them. And there's hundreds of fish dead. So where does this come from? So I don't know what the real intent of spraying it into the volcano itself. That would be ridiculous. That would have no effect if the intent is to dissolve something. It won't dissolve anything. Maybe it will disperse the actual trace of that this is a volcano on the surface of the ocean. That might be the reason why they also pump it into the volcano, to actually cloak what we are actually dealing with.
Well, what do you think? What do you think, Griff? Do you think that? I mean, obviously, this is a tremendous deception that's going on, but do you think that it was a mistake that they tapped into it, and how do you think going about it now? Is this a damage control thing, or is this capitalizing on an opportunity, would you say?
Well, it's gross ignorance and stupidity going on right now. They're still putting emphasis on their profits and their money at the expense of the people. I don't think they give a damn about the people. Certainly don't care about the cities along the Gulf Coast, or for that matter, the rest of the world. This is not just a Gulf of Mexico problem. This is going to expand. We're only beginning to look at the devastation of this problem. I agree with you, Henning. This is a volcano. This is not just an ordinary oil leak. It's impossible to deal with this. They cannot stop it. They can drill all of the relief wells they want, and they will create additional problems for themselves and for the American people and for the people of the world. But they will not be able to stop it with so-called relief wells. That's just silliness, ludicrous. I don't know how anybody with a multi-billion-dollar corporation would attempt to do something like that when they've already fractured a delicate terrain and created a nightmare volcano that they can't control, and they turn right around and try to do it again. It makes no sense at all. Even insane people wouldn't do what they're doing right now, and the government is aiding and abetting in the damage to the terrain, to the Gulf, to the wildlife, and to the people of all of those states. They are going to wind up killing a lot of people unless somebody, maybe we'll have an effect on that by this radio program tonight. I know there are people all over the world listening to us right now. I hope there are many people along the Gulf listening to our words and will heed our warning. We're putting ourselves in some jeopardy by doing this. I want you to know. Please consider leaving the area. You're going to have to at some point in the future for any number of reasons. Genetic problems are going to start occurring in youngsters and newborn babies down there. Breathing, respiratory problems, headaches, blood problems will occur in 1 million people or more in the Gulf area. Joe, I wanted to say one thing about the latitude, longitude.
Yes, sir.
The numbers that came up on the rovers were like 12. I'm looking at one right now, 12, 26, 45. And the other one, the longitude, I called it, was 10431.